So, welcome to today's full council meeting, and in particular, as always, welcome to members of the public who are attending in the public gallery, those in the conference hall next door, and also those watching the meeting via our YouTube channel. For those in the building, I would like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure. As always, please leave the chamber by the nearest exit and congregate in front of the cathedral. As with any council meeting, please treat each other with due courtesy, tolerance and respect. And can I also remind everyone to ensure their mobile devices are switched to silent mode to avoid interrupting the meeting. Thank you. So first, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Bales, Breckles, Eddy, Johnson, King, Logan, Renard and Goggin. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Rippington.
Yes, unfortunately, Councillor Martin can't make it either.
Any others? Thank you very much indeed. Next is declarations of interest. Please can I ask whether any councillors have any interest to declare regarding the items on today's agenda? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the previous meetings. I move that the minutes of the previous meetings of full council held on the 12th of November 2024 and the 19th of November 2024 be agreed as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Lord Mayor, can I just say, I've emailed Democratic Services, but I'm noted as being absent on the 12th of November meeting, but I was in fact here. So. Just wishful thinking.
Thank you for correcting the record. So if we can amend the minutes. Thank you very much, Oliver. So do I have a seconder to those amended minutes?
I rise to second those minutes and reserve my remarks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcott. So can I take it that the minutes are agreed? Thank you. So next is agenda item 5, Lord Mayor's business. Council notes the sad news that Alderman Jeff Lovell has recently passed away. Jeff was elected as councillor for Filwood in 2007 and served on a huge variety of committees within the council, and he was also elected Lord Mayor in 2016. Jeff's family have requested that we hold a memorial at the next full council meeting in January so that they are also able to attend. Jeff's funeral will be held on Tuesday the 17th of December at 11:15 in the morning at Bristol South Crematorium. Can I please ask full council to now stand with me and observe a minute's silence? Thank you very much, everyone. Now, before we move on to public forum, I'd like to invite the leader of the council, Councillor Dyer, to make a brief statement on the Avon Pension Fund. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, about 30 minutes before this meeting began, I received a communication from Councillor Paul Crossley, who is the chair of the Avon Pension Fund Committee. That statement is going to be circulated to all councillors shortly after this meeting, and I imagine it will be made public at some point. I'm able to basically say this part. Following various statements and various communications from both members in the chamber and, more importantly, from members of the public, the committee of the Avon Pensions Fund is now considering those statements and its legal and financial guidance before it decides the fund's next steps regarding various investments, and it will then confirm the next steps. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dyer. So now let's move on to agenda item 6, public forum. As always, 30 minutes will be allowed for this item, which is split into 50 minutes for petitions and statements and 50 minutes for questions. Details of the petition statements and questions received have been published on our website. I'll go through the list, calling on those who have indicated they plan to attend the meeting. Speakers are asked to pay attention to the traffic lights on the dais and to start to wrap up when the lights turn to amber. Now, there were no public forum petition received for this meeting. There were, however, a total of 129 public statements received, and lists will be displayed on the screens. 28 members of the public indicated that they plan to attend and speak their statements. They are displayed on the screen now. Due to the large number of attendees today, I will be moving around the order to ensure as many different subjects as possible are heard. I'll invite each person to speak for 1 minute. Please summarise your statement and bear in mind they were published for councillors and the public to read in advance of the meeting. First, do we have Melissa Topping? Thank you. Melissa, you've got 1 minute, please.
This statement urgently requests the immediate halt of the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood trial, pending reassessment and proper consultation with all stakeholders, residents and businesses. Now true information is available. The trial fails to demonstrate adequate consultation with disabled people as evidenced by the Equalities Impact Assessment. This is a serious legal concern. The planned road closures and restrictions will severely impact accessibility for disabled. This includes myself, elderly residents, including those with the inability to reach homes and essential services, and healthcare providers. Due to road closures and restrictions on large vehicles and increased journey times and difficulty navigating the proposed changes causing distress and anxiety, lack of consideration for emergency vehicle access and response times. The consultation process did not include disabled residents or adequately inform community about the full extent of the proposed changes. The trial is causing serious safety concerns for all residents, particularly disabled drivers, due to increased traffic on smaller side streets.
Melissa, your final sentence, please.
Limited access to emergency vehicles. We ask if you would please reassess this situation, halt the scheme now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is public statement number 6 from Sarah Ward on the divestment from companies that aid Israel. Is Sarah here? Sarah? No. Okay, let's move on to public statement number 7 from Yusuf Izzat, which is Bristol City Council on divestment for Palestine. Is Yusuf here? Yeah, thank you. 1 minute, please, Yusuf.
Right, thank you, Lord Mayor. More than 5,000 people, civilians, have been killed in Gaza, including 16,000 child. And more than 80% of the Gaza infrastructure have been destroyed. We call the council to pass a motion in next meeting addressing the £20 million who investing in armed trade companies and companies who are profiting from the illegal settlements in the East Bank. Also, the council claimed that they are not responsible, which is not true. This is our taxpayer money, and the council should invest it in ethical way and not funnel our money to companies who are complicit in this genocide. We would like to emphasize that this passing a motion, not by kind words or just by statements, will put a political pressure on the Even Pension Fund to divest from the armed trade companies. We need passing a motion. We don't need any emails or more of statements. We need an action. And I'll be honest with you, if all the councillor here doesn't care about the child who killed in Gaza, especially the Conservatives, definitely, just care about
last
the 16.
sentence, please.
Yeah, if you don't care about the if you don't care about a child have been killed in Gaza, which is absolutely what we see from our Labour government, please care about your repetition.
Okay,
please
thank you
care
very
about
much.
your repetition.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next speaker. Thank you. So now I'd like to jump to public statement number 22, Hilary Ryden and Jan Wren on the Brislington Meadows housing development. Are either Hilary or Jan here? 1 minute, please.
Thank you. In 2014, an area in Broomhill, Brislington was identified for the local plan. The area is made up of ancient meadowland, the last remaining and only one in Bristol, and an adjoining piece of brownfield land, which was an area housing office and the local police station. The brownfield land has remained untouched since it was acquired by Homes England. Brislington Meadows, as the whole 9.1 hectares, has been agreed for outline planning permission for 260 dwellings, which directly opposes the ecological emergency that was declared by Bristol City Council and supported by Avon Wildlife in 2020. The meadowland is environmentally and ecologically of huge importance, yet the brownfield site remains untouched. The whole area should be re-examined and reclassified as two sites, brownfield for development and the meadows, which should remain untouched in its natural state. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much indeed. So next, public statement number 23 from Jen Smith on the Golden Motion Council Communications Retention Policy. Jen.
The shortcomings in the Council's data storage and retention policies identified in the Golden Motion is a big issue inextricably linked to other serious problems. This includes subject access requests, freedom of information requests, and blocking people's right to take part in public forum. It also includes the way the Council collates, stores and retains communications and uses its resources to surveil members of the public. Some parents have been waiting over 2 years for an independent investigation into surveillance. It's likely this will go a similar way. It was revealed to me last week by the Council that there is no such thing as merely a private citizen if you have any connection to it, which can mean councillors, staff and volunteers for charities or organisations. To all these people, it should be entirely foreseeable that their rights as private citizens simply do not exist. So therefore, neither should a single mailbox at the Council, including council leaders, legal team and monitoring officer. Every one of your despicable deeds should be made available for Bristolians to judge you as much as you judge them.
Thank you, Jen. And now public statement 54 from the Bristol Rail campaign on the Muller Road consultation. Is anyone here from that campaign? Yes, thank you. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Yes, this is regarding the new Ashley Down station, which we're obviously delighted about. It is reasonably well serviced by buses. So on Muller Road, there's 2 bus routes, one of which is well served. The other one has got only one bus stop in one direction, not the other. So we have been back to you about this several times, and we'd really like this sorted because then people can start to use buses to get to local trains. And we think that makes excellent sense, makes best use of the railway network. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump now to public statement 120 from Vanessa Holder on Beaufort Road. Is Vanessa here? In that case, I'll go back to the beginning and take some more statements in order. So, public statement number 5, Miss Tanya Bedford on the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. Is Tanya here? Okay. Next one then is public statement 16, Eldin Farmy. Eldin, this is on Gaza and the Avon Pension Fund investments. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Bristol City Council say they bear no responsibility for investment decisions made by Avon Pension Fund. But Bristol City Council is responsible to the taxpayer for the way it spends our money. It's hugely disappointing that our city's political leadership wishes to hide behind legal niceties rather than exercising moral leadership. Does our council leadership believe it's morally acceptable to invest public money in companies aiding or profiting from egregious breaches of international law? Does it believe they bear no responsibility for the outcomes of those investments? Are they content to make the citizens of Bristol complicit in Israel's actions. It's our hard-earned money that is being funneled into companies aiding or profiting from very serious breaches of international law and without our informed consent. It's time Bristol City Council began to support our journey by supporting a motion to divest funds from companies aiding or profiting from Israel's breaches of international law.
Thank you very much.
It's not a political choice.
We need to move on. Thank you. You've had your minute. Thank you. Let's go on to the next speaker.
Lord Mayor, point of order.
Councillor Bryan.
Point of order. I'm aware that there are residents from my ward who are trying to come into the meeting into the public gallery, and apparently they're being blocked from coming into the public gallery. Is it all right for you to allow those residents to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much for that interjection, Councillor Bryan. We're not changing the way people are arranged in the room at this point for a safety reasons, so thank you very much anyway. Let's move on to public statement number 20, and this is from Sophie Pearce-Jones. Is Sophie here? Sophie? No. Okay. So we'll move on to public statement 28 from Lindsay Melling. Is Lindsay here? Lindsay, you've got 1 minute, and this is on support for the continued implementation of the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I live on Beaufort Road, which had East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood measures installed about 6 weeks ago. It's been incredible ever since. I used to have crashes, people arguing, constant traffic outside my house. Now I hear kids laughing, going to school, scooting, riding their bikes. I'd like to ask Council to consider residents when debating this motion later. We really appreciate the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood. We would like to see the trial continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Public statement 45 from Tom Cuthbertson. Is Tom here? Okay. Public statement 47 from Katrine Stewart. Is Katrine here? Okay. Public statement 56 from Dr. Suzanne Audrey on Council Communications Retention Policy. Suzanne, you've got 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Morris and the Conservative Group for submitting the golden motion on the Council Communications Retention Policy. Something seems to be wrong with the Council's procedures relating to data retention and to freedom of information requests. A number of public statements and questions about these issues have either been blocked or have received vague and incomplete answers. The roots of these problems appear to be in the previous administration, but they are now impacting on the new committee system. The Nolan principles stress the importance of honesty, integrity, objectivity, accountability, selflessness, openness, and leadership in public life. As the motion indicates, confidence in our public institutions depends upon timely and accurate responses to legitimate inquiries. I hope the motion will be supported by councillors from all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And public statement 60 from Thomas Herod. Is Thomas here? Okay. Public statement 71 from Ben Reddick. Is Ben here? Yep. Ben, you've got a minute to talk about the pension fund divestment, an opportunity for Bristol to show the world what it values.
Bristol City prides itself on its record on progressive policies related to climate and social justice. They form an important part of its image and its success in attracting investment and visitors from around the world. Imagine the impact if it now led the way in refusing to support what everyone knows is an illegal occupation and oppression in Palestine. Divesting from businesses that make products or services that support what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank would be a priceless investment in the city's reputation for justice and sustainability. Bristol City Council is a major contributor to the pension fund. It should use its position and influence to make sure its investments are as clean as they can be. Such a move would also leverage a disproportionate shift among other financial institutions. That would be something to be proud of.
Thank you very much, Ben. Is Jane Waddell here? Public Statement 73? No. Is Lama Kidan? Apologies for pronunciation. Lama Kidan, you have 1 minute on Public Statement 75.
Thank you. My name is Lama Kidan, but thank you for your time. I'm a Palestinian living here in the UK. My family are back in the occupied territories in Palestine. It's safe to say that they've encountered some really difficult times. They have done so my whole life. I'm separated from my family and I live here by myself. I live in Bristol and I genuinely believe that Bristol is a very ethical place. This is the most live-streamed genocide that we've ever seen. Every day I see my people shattered to pieces. It's absolutely devastating. And I urge you to discuss this and to really take whatever it is that's in your power. As the council, you must have something to do with the decisions that Avon Pension Fund does. And I urge you to use whatever is in your power to ensure that those investments are done into companies that are ethical and don't violate human rights. I thank you for that.
Thank you very much for that. So I think at this point we'll move on to public questions received. The questions received have been published on the website and are shared on the screen now. 62 questions were received from members of the public and 25 of those have indicated they wish to attend. We will try to cover as many questions as possible in the 15 minutes available. It may not be possible for everyone to speak, so we ask for your patience as we run through the questions. And please remember, everyone will get a written response to their questions as well. As with the statements, I will be moving around the order to ensure as many different subjects as possible are heard. When I call on you, your question will be displayed on the screen. The leader or relevant chair will reply verbally to your question. Following the reply, you'll be invited to ask supplementary questions. Please remember you have a maximum of 2. So first is public question number 1 from Carolyn and Derek Tanzor. Is Carolyn and Derek Tanzor here? Okay, and this is a question on van dwellers on the Downs, and it's to Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams, if you'd like to give your response, please, and then we can have a supplementary.
Lord Mayor, I think the same issue has happened again. It's happened at the last full council. The question has actually been assigned to Councillor Parsons as chair of the Housing Committee.
Councillor Parsons, would you like to answer that question?
That's right. For the avoidance of doubt, questions regarding vehicle dwellers in the city, I'll be answering those today. Thank you very much for your question. So this is about vehicle dwellers living on the Downs. When are the council going to take action? I mean, I think it's important to kind of put this in context to start off with. So, not so many years ago, we had no more than around 100 people living in vehicles across the city. Now we have over 600 vehicles all across Bristol being lived in. And this is a growing challenge for the city. Not only is it a challenge for settled residents, housed residents in the city, and for our streets and green spaces, but also for the welfare of the people living in those vehicles themselves. So this is something that I and my committee have taken very seriously right from the start of our new administration. And one of our first actions was I asked that our policy on vehicle dwellers be reviewed, and that we bring actions forwards that can really address this very large challenge that we now have. And that work has begun. Officers have been working on a range of proposals, and most recently last week we held a round table which I and Councillor Williams convened with officers from various different services and our partner agencies across the city. That is contributing to a range of work that we're going to be bringing forwards in the new year, and we've got a paper that will be coming to my committee early next year, where we will be we'll be discussing the actions that we're going to be taking. We know, I think, given the very large increase in the numbers of people living in vehicles, which is a direct consequence of the housing crisis, that our current approach is not sustainable, and we do need to review it. So thank you for your question.
You can ask one supplementary. Could you hold the microphone a bit closer to you? Thank you.
I would like to say that the vans, etc., in Savile Road, that must surely be unlawful, because if you park an ordinary car there, you are more than 5 hours, you are charged, whereas all the other vans, etc., should not be there.
Yeah, so I understand there are some complexities around the law on what can and cannot be enforced through traffic and parking regulations. But my colleagues on the Transport and Connectivity Committee are reviewing our whole policy around parking on and around the Downs at the moment. And there's going to be work coming forwards in the new year, I understand, about that.
Thank you very much. So next I'd like to take public question number 7 from Lama again. And this is a question on the Avon Pension Fund to Councillor Dyer. Councillor Dyer, would you like to respond? And then the member of the public can have a supplementary.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, the Council's ethical and equitable investment policy sets out the Council's investment principles, and decisions are made in accordance with that policy. The Council's pension fund is held with the Avon Pension Fund and administered by Bath and North East Somerset, and those schemes are administered by the pension fund separately from the Council's funding investments. However, we do have representation on that pension fund in the form of Councillor Fiance. And I believe Councillor Fiance has been meeting with some of the protesters and supporters of the Palestine movement. Listen to your speech earlier on, and I did write this beforehand, but I think you just strengthened what I said here, was that anyone who has watched the terrible scenes in Palestine cannot be failed to be moved and must take whatever action they can to try and prevent that happening even further. I mean, sadly, Palestine is not the only place where we are seeing people being killed and people being slaughtered. In the however, we and other authorities make investment decisions, we can seek to influence our investment decisions, and we can pass petitions. In the end, however, it is up to national governments, and national governments need to step to the fore and put an end to what's happening in Palestine immediately. I don't know if you heard my comment earlier on. We now know that what you are saying, your protests that you come out on a regular basis to do time after time, appear to be finally having an impact on the pension fund. I guess we'll find out when they have their next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Lama, did you have a supplementary question you'd like to ask?
Yes, please. I was just wondering whether you believe that passing a divestment motion would help pressure the Avon Pension Fund to stop investing in arms companies, given Bristol's significant contribution to the fund.
I think that any public pressure will have some influence. It's impossible for me to say how much, but staying silent is not an option either. The more we put pressure on by having public statements, having the marches we've had out on a regular basis here in Bristol and elsewhere right across the country, it must have an influence. People have to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. So next I'd like to take public question number 13 from Melissa Topping. Is Melissa here? Yeah, of course. And this is on the East Bristol Liveable neighbourhood. And you had 3 questions for Councillor Plowden. Councillor Plowden, do you want to take them in turn or all together?
I'm going to just speak to the questions, but before I do, Lord Mayor, I think it's we've seen an incredible number of statements today at the public forum, and I think it's a great thing to see so much public engagement in local democracy. It's maybe because the centre of power has moved from upstairs, the Mayor's office, actually into this very chamber, which I think is a really good thing. I think, given the volume of positive and negative statements we've had on the East Bristol Liveable neighbourhood, we really are demonstrating the word of the year, as announced yesterday by Merriam-Webster, which is polarisation. And I really hope that we can move to a situation where we are listening to one another, we're willing to compromise, engage in debate, look at the evidence, and make really good public policy on the back of that. Thank you. So turning to the questions, a proposal to implement livable neighbourhoods in Bristol came out of the Citizens' Assembly, a representative group of Bristol residents. It's clear that there's a significant number of local residents across the scheme who are strongly in favour of the trial scheme being implemented, as well as many who are opposed. The project engaged with the community since January 2022 to develop proposals for the first livable neighbourhood scheme. The process involved multiple stages of engagement to shape the scheme before formal consultation on the proposed trial scheme. The decision to propose with the trial scheme was based on a thorough evaluation of its potential benefits and impacts, including the aims to improve air quality, road safety and health outcomes. Initial implementation of the scheme is due to be completed by January 2025. The Council will then monitor the scheme for 6 months before re-engaging with the community regarding a proposed permanent scheme. It's going ahead because the evidence from across the country shows that delivering lower traffic streets is beneficial to all and improves the health of the general population.
Thank you very much. Minister, you've got 2 supplementary questions should you wish to take them.
I'd like to know why you're continuing regardless. I'd like to know why you're continuing regardless, despite the huge, severe issues that are being raised regarding health, safety and daily lives.
Well, because there's a lot of support as well as and a lot of opposition to this scheme. We're continuing because we want to see how this pans out over the next 6 months, to work with the community, to listen, to see how it's working, and then to make decisions about how to make this permanent. Well, I'm also bringing forward proposals over the next month or so to make sure that we're proactively using citizen science to listen to the seldom heard voices across the community, to make sure we're as inclusive as we possibly can.
You haven't been listening to those seldom heard voices.
Melissa, you can ask one more supplementary if you wish. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on. So the next question is from Jamie Bolly. And actually, Jamie, you've asked 2 questions, obstacles for police officers and the spending. They're both for Councillor Plowden. Is Jamie here, by the way? Jamie? No. Okay, let's move on then to public question 41. From Hilary and Ryden and Jan Wren on Brisington Meadows, and that's a question for Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I think when any reserved matters comes in, I can't speak for the Green Party because I'm not a Green member, but ultimately any reserved matters application that comes in will be reviewed by the planning department, and if it comes to a committee, it will be up to committee members to review the application against all local and national policies and to make a decision based on that. I think for the sake of context, there's a couple of other things I want to add in here. First is the history of the site, and as far as the previous administration sold some of the land to Homes England. Homes England then put in an application that was proposed in the local plan it has been taken out of the local plan that was submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. So as things stand, the Council's position is that we do not want to build on that land and that we want to take that allocation in the local plan will not proceed. We do, however, have a process to go through with the Planning Inspectorate where the local plan is subject to public hearings and examination by the inspectors. And this is likely to be one of the areas that they will be pushing for further explanation and discussion on, and we will be defending that position. The other thing to say is, of course, there has been outline permission granted by the Planning Inspectorate, so the principle of development on that land has been agreed by government agency, and if it is to proceed, it will be preceded by a government body. So there is an aspect here where what happens is to some extent outside our control, but the Council's position is that we do not want to build on that land, and that that will be the position we're defending at the local plan as it goes through examination.
You can ask a supplementary if you wish.
Thank you. Thank you. It was good and reassuring to hear that the council doesn't support the idea of development on the land. We are trying to engage in conversations with our local MP because we do realise that with it being at Homes England level and the planning inspectorate, that does kind of take it to a higher level. So I guess our question is, can we rely, as you've said, that if at any point a building contractor does approach with the reserved matters, that the application will be given very thorough and wholehearted scrutiny, given the sensitivity and the huge importance of the land that is so badly needed to be kept as a natural habitat? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so as the Economy and Skills Policy Committee Chair, I can't make the decisions, but I can assure you that the planning team and I'm sure any committee, as and when any potential application came to committee, will be thoroughly examined and reviewed in the light of, obviously, in the light of the circumstances, the history, and the public interest.
Thank you very much. I'll take one more public question, then we'll have to move on, I'm afraid. So is David Redwell here? Yeah. So David, can we take your public question number 61? And this is a question for Councillor Plowden, I believe. Councillor Plowden, do you have a response?
The City Council and WECA have met with bus operators, including First, to discuss opportunities to enhance the bus network, including in the south and east of Bristol. The City Council welcomes the newly announced additional bus service improvement fund pot for the West of England region and looks forward to engaging with the combined authority how this can be used to make further improvements in the bus network.
David, do you have a supplementary, please?
My supplementary is we still don't have a set fare. I believe it's now the 18th of this month. We're going to discuss what we put in place of the £3 cap, maybe around 240 I'm told now, but we'll see. But I am concerned that we may have a 240 commercial cap and a £2 supporting cap for fares. So stagecoach buses, some of them will be £2, Big Lemon will be £2, first buses will be 240. I think this is a recipe for passengers not being able to stand in the city region, including North Somerset. I'd ask again to go away and look at this. We need an easy fare scale in the city that people understand to travel to work, school, education, leisure and tourism and hospitals. So I hope that can be re-looked at.
I agree with you, but I don't think there was a question in there.
Well, I think the question is there more? I think the question was simply: is there more discussion with the mayor about setting some reasonable fares when he makes that decision with Hannah Young on the 18th of this month, and the fares are understandable to the travelling public in Bristol?
As you may know, Dave, the Enhanced Partnership meeting, which is sitting to look at the fare structure, has been cancelled 3 times already. I'm not entirely clear about what the Metro Mayor is doing, and I'm afraid I can't speak for him, and I'm sad about that, because I do think that we should be collaborating across the region in the interest of the travelling public, and I don't see enough of that happening at the moment.
Thank you. Can I remind all members of the public that you will get written replies to all of your questions? So apologies if you didn't have time to speak your statements or questions today. I'd like to inform members of the public that the adjournment for today's meeting is expected at 3:30. I invite you to stay if you'd like to hear the other agenda items. If not, please leave as quietly as possible. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 7 is petitions notified by councillors. There has been one councillor petition received for this meeting, and councillors are invited to speak for 1 minute. Councillor Bartle, would you like to present your petition, please?
Yes, so this is a petition from some residents on Whitehall Road, where essentially there's a little bit of pavement that it's illegal to park on, and people are parking on it, and they cannot stop this from happening. And they've asked me, can I help stop this from happening? And I said, well, yeah, we might be able to get you a bollard. And they said, when? And I said, oh, you know, in a couple of years. So they've written this petition saying it requires immediate action. So I'm kind of here to sort of bolster that ask, the ways that all of us councillors have these little problems that, you know, they would really help people's lives, that we just don't have any mechanisms to intervene in, other than a process that is really slow and isn't very guaranteed. So more enforcement for illegal parking, more access to things like planters.
Councillor Bartle, if you could sum up very quickly, please.
Oh, sorry. Planters and bollards, and also making sure that our area committees actually deliver stuff for our neighbourhoods directly, more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, agenda item 8 is the petition debate, Halt, the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood Scheme. This petition has reached the 3,500 signature threshold to qualify for a full council debate, and 20 minutes is the maximum time allowed for this item. The petition organiser will be permitted up to 5 minutes to present the petition and its objectives. We will then proceed to the council debate. I will also ask the leader or relevant policy committee chair to respond at the end of the debate. As a reminder, this is not an interactive discussion involving the public. The issues raised in the petition and the comments of members during the debate will be referred to the leader and relevant policy committee chair for a response. So firstly, if I could ask Melissa Topping to present the petition, please. Melissa, you've got a maximum of 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa and I'm a resident of Redfield. I'm before you today not only as an individual, but as a representative of countless others who have been deeply affected by the start of the EBLN implementation. As a disabled resident, I rely on vehicle accessible routes to get to essential services like my GP surgery and home. The current plans will make this nearly impossible. The lack of accessible alternative routes will force me to cancel crucial appointments, leaving my health and well-being compromised. It'll also stop me going out on trips that aren't necessary. This is not just my experience. This is a common struggle for many disabled individuals in our community. This ill-conceived project being imposed upon our community without proper consultation is wreaking havoc on our lives and livelihoods, even before full implementation has occurred. We, the undersigned, are united in our opposition to this scheme. We are residents, business owners, disabled, elderly and vulnerable community members who have been and will be directly impacted by this misguided decision. The scheme's devastating consequences are clear. Unjustified traffic chaos. The scheme has created gridlock on our roads, making it difficult for residents to get to work, school and essential appointments. This has led to increased stress, frustration and wasted time. Thankfully, no loss of life as yet. Economic ruin for local businesses. Our local businesses, the backbone of our community, they're suffering. They have a reduced foot traffic already. Difficulty with deliveries and increased operating costs are threatening their survival. Health and safety risks have been increased with traffic congestion has led to higher levels of air pollution, endangering the health of our residents, particularly children and the elderly, with safety risks at night increasing. Our community voices have been ignored. The council has failed to listen to the concerns of the community. Despite overwhelming opposition, they have pushed ahead with this harmful scheme, disregarding the needs of the people. Rising crime is inevitable in dead ends throughout the scheme. The scheme is a colossal waste of public funds, money that could be better spent on improving public transport, cycling infrastructure, or supporting local businesses is being squandered on a project that is causing more harm than good. It is cutting off support networks to the most vulnerable, making it difficult for friends and family to visit. Their journeys are now trebled in time, so their time is now being spent in traffic instead. Beyond the impact on individuals, the closure has also had devastating effect on local businesses. Shops and restaurants, the lifeblood of our community, are suffering from significant decline in foot traffic and deliveries. This not only threatens their livelihoods, but also diminishes the vibrant character of our neighbourhood. The loss of accessibility will also hinder those essential services like deliveries. Many residents, especially the elderly and those with disabilities, rely on home deliveries for groceries and medications. The current situation will make it very difficult, if not impossible, for these vital supplies to reach those that need them. I urge you to consider the far-reaching consequences of this situation. The impact on accessibility, local businesses and essential services is profound. We need immediate action to restore access and support our community. We demand that Bristol City Council immediately halt this scheme and reconsider their approach. We need solutions that truly improve our community, not ones that create more problems. We call for a comprehensive review of the scheme with meaningful consultation involving all stakeholders along with all emergency crews, local. We need a plan that prioritises the needs of our community and supports sustainable, equitable development. We urge you to protect our community. I implore you, as our councillors, to please stand for your constituents. Together, we can demand a solution that prioritises the needs of our community, especially those who are most vulnerable. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much, Melissa. So now we'll move to the councillor debate. And I understand some councillors will be making maiden speeches today, so good luck with those. So firstly, I'd like to call upon Councillor Abby Finch to speak on behalf of the Green Group. And you've got 3 minutes, Councillor Finch.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you also to everyone involved in bringing this petition to us today and everyone who wrote in with statements and questions. It takes bravery, especially when this is something that affects people in such personal ways. What seems clear to me from reading this petition, as well as the public forum statements, both against and in favour of this scheme, is that there is a general need for less traffic congestion, reduced air pollution, thriving local businesses, safer roads for everyone, better public transport, and a council that acts with transparency and listens to the communities we serve. I think often these underlying shared needs can be lost in an era of polarising narratives. We often dig our heels in to protect and defend our position rather than really listen to what those who disagree with us are saying. So I ask all councillors, as well as everyone who lives, works or travels through the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood area, to keep an open mind, actively listen to different perspectives and to be open to changing our views. This is something I will continue to challenge myself to do. I've said before that I am in support of this scheme, but I want to make it clear that the reasons I'm in support of it is that I want to see an East Bristol where people can walk, wheel and cycle safely, where there is less air pollution and where local businesses can thrive, as these things are what the EBLN has been designed to achieve. If it does not achieve these things, then I'll support finding a different approach. The issue is that at the moment it's too early to tell. The trial scheme is still being installed, and even once it's in, it will take a few months before people have adapted their journeys and we can start to properly see the effects of the scheme. Throughout the trial scheme, the project team will be monitoring its effects, including the levels of traffic and air pollution. But numbers aren't everything, and your feedback on how it's affecting you is vital during this period. I hear the call from this petition to end the trial immediately. What I would say is that if this trial were to end immediately, we'll never know if it would have worked, and all this will be for nothing. The money for the EBLN comes from a government grant specifically for this project, and we would lose out on that money if we were to halt it now. We are in a climate...
There's no public engagement at this point. Thank you. Please listen to the councillors who are elected to represent you. Thank you. Councillor Finch, please continue.
Thank you. We are in a climate emergency, and transport is a huge source of emissions in Bristol. Also, the population of Bristol is growing. Keeping things as they are is not an option. Doing nothing means more traffic and more air pollution as the population increases. We need to be bold, and we need to try something different. However, that will only work if we as councillors listen to what the people of East Bristol are saying, not just those whose views align with our own individual beliefs, but the whole range of views from the whole range of diverse communities we represent, especially those that are all too often marginalised and underrepresented. We need change, but we need change that works for everyone. That's why I welcome this petition and all the public forum statements we've received today. And that's why I encourage you all to reach out to your councillors with your experiences of the East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood Scheme. Tell us what's working and tell us what's not working, and give us the details as well. As councillors, I hope we can all promise to listen to your views and feedback with an open mind and find solutions that work for East Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move to Councillor Tim Rippington to speak on behalf of the Labour Group, please. Councillor Rippington.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and the petitioners for bringing this here today. I know from the correspondence that I've received from residents in my ward that there are people who largely support the goals of the EBLN but see contradictions in some of the outcomes we are seeing, intended or otherwise. It's important the Council takes this opportunity to get this right. I talk to a lot of people who want to live in safer, cleaner streets, free from motorists who use their roads as cut-throughs to avoid traffic on main roads. These cars often travel at speed and make quiet residential roads hazardous, so I fully support the aims of livable neighbourhoods. However, it's clear that this first pilot scheme has some specific issues which could be avoided. The junction of Blacksworth Road and Church Road, for example, has always been an issue. If one or two cars are turning right, it blocks up all the through traffic across this junction. I've experienced this many times myself. This problem has become exacerbated by the closure of other roads and had severe knock-on consequences. Similarly, my colleague the Councillor for Troopers Hill has long made representations about the dangerous nature of Cruise Hole Road and how this needed to be looked at as part of the livable neighbourhood. So while we do not support the reversal of this scheme, which must be allowed to run for its trial period, we are calling for urgent action to be taken on both of these issues, which predate the scheme and should have been taken into account in its design. In discussing the EBLN, we cannot ignore the true elephant in the room, the abysmal nature of Bristol's public transport system. These schemes are particularly successful in London, where they have a reliable network of buses and mass transit. If we want people to take up alternatives to cars, we must provide them. Our privatised bus network clearly won't do this. We need to move to a franchise or municipal system which works for Bristol's citizens, not for private profit. And we need a mass transit system that won't grind traffic to a halt. We have seen from the work of the Bus Task and Finish Group that the Council can work collaboratively with the Combined Authority towards delivering better bus provision when the money is available. Although we do not yet know the outcome of the deliberations of that group, providing additional services through the East Bristol Livable Neighbourhood has been one of our priorities. I would also like to reiterate that on a project as ambitious as a livable neighbourhood, It's important that people's genuine concerns are listened to. That is not telling people, as certain Green Party councillors have, that their concerns aren't valid, and even that they should move to the countryside where driving a car is supposedly more socially acceptable. These comments have been widely shared on social media. I raise this because we want the Liveable neighbourhood to work. Engaging people like that isn't conducive to these aims. So in conclusion, I hope that the Chair of the Transport Committee listens to the genuine concerns which residents have relating to this scheme, especially to the points that I have made earlier. The Council can deliver a scheme that works for everyone. I sincerely hope it does. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Councillor Coombs to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now, us politicians tend to be confident people, or at least present as such. In order to stand and win elections, we need a good deal of self-belief. So, just to debate in this chamber, to persuade others, we first need to convince ourselves that we are right. But for public engagement, co-design and a pilot project, as this is described, we need to be curious, empathetic and open-minded. We need to accept that we don't have all of the answers and be willing to change our mind. This council has recently moved from a system that only acknowledged one person's point of view to a collaborative approach that seeks to incorporate multiple perspectives. Those of us that campaigned for that change should ensure that this plurality extends to all the decisions that we make. The Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood pilot project was established by the previous administration, but this current council needs to take ownership of it. So who wouldn't want to live in a livable neighbourhood? Less through traffic, resulting in quieter, less polluted, people-friendly streets. I'm quoting from the project website, which is universally positive in its description of the project and its possible effects. Lots of people have registered positive statements in favour of the project at this meeting, which is an important part of the story. But on the other hand, 760 objections were sent in to the statutory consultation from people concerned that the proposals wouldn't make their lives better. Issues like longer car journeys, lost parking spaces, more traffic on Church Road are understandable concerns, but they don't appear in our public-facing materials. So if we're trying to work with residents, we need to actually talk about the concerns raised through consultation, as well as the benefits to health, active travel and community. We should acknowledge that no change is universally beneficial, and pretending that it is simply discounts those contrary perspectives. That's the kind of attitude that this city threw out in the mayoral referendum 2 years ago. I think it also explains why over 3,500 people were motivated to sign this petition in order to spark this debate today. The petition calls for proper consultation and consideration of the full impact of the scheme, and I can't disagree with that. I hope that the pilot project is a success and residents see real benefits to their health and travel habits. At the end of the pilot project, I want us to look at the data, see what has worked and what hasn't. The timeline on the project website does not currently show an end date for the trial, nor a decision gateway for reviewing the data and deciding whether to implement the scheme permanently. So I think that our commitment to following the evidence would be a lot more credible if we did publish those dates.
Thank you. And now Councillor Weston to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I thought I was going to be the contrary opinion, but it seems that suddenly, in light of a very large and successful petition, congratulations, that other parties seem to have changed their mind. It's fair to say that the Conservatives have been, should we say, more traditionally sceptical of livable neighbourhoods, and it's no surprise that as it's trying to be introduced, that we're hearing that now. If livable neighbourhoods aren't designed properly, then they will cause mayhem for a large number of people living in those communities. And we're seeing that now, where East Bristol is starting to gridlock up because it's not being put in properly. And what's really concerning for me is that, as other colleagues have said, is when we did the consultation on this, concerns were raised, yet they seem to have been ignored, not recorded and not reflected in what was being put out. And I did note the comment on you can move to the countryside where cars are more prevalent and more useful. I mean, it's an intriguing view, it has to be said, for a politician to express that to residents. At the moment, the East Liveable neighbourhood is not working as I think anyone would say. I know it's in the embryonic stage, it's being installed and all the rest of it, but it isn't working. Now, Albert Einstein said it was insanity to basically, I'm paraphrasing, to do the same thing again and again and expect a different result. Now, my fear is if we're not careful, we're going to do the same thing again and again when we look at South Bristol and wherever else we try and put these in, and the same thing will happen. Where those voices that disagree, I'm loving this, by the way.
It's a rare occurrence, Councillor Weston. Don't get used to it.
It's so unusual. Start doing it immediately. Right, there we go. I've lost my train. Insanity is doing the same thing again. I hope for a different result. And if we're doing this in South Bristol and other places, we have to make sure we're giving voice and listening to those that have genuine concerns. I also think Albert Einstein would agree with it's insanity to press on with something that isn't working. And at the moment, I don't believe East Bristol Liveable Neighbourhood is working for the communities out there. And even though I'm not a councillor in that area, my inbox is filled with those saying that it's not working. It's affecting people in my ward, in my communities, as they try and go about their lives as well. So I urge us to pause and rethink and pay attention to those voices, even if we don't agree with them. And they are clearly here today. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Plowden, would you like to respond as the relevant policy committee chair to the debate? You've got 3 minutes if you do.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who signed the petition and who has today come from East Bristol for engaging in local democracy. I'd like to acknowledge there's a great deal of public concern about this trial, but also a lot of support. I need to say we hear the very real concerns. We hear how hard it is for people to get their kids to school and get to work on time. We hear the anxieties about air quality outside primary schools as children arrive. We hear how businesses are afraid of a fall-off in passing trade. We hear how some people are very anxious indeed about their personal mobility. Cars have given so many people freedom of mobility, but they're causing congestion and increasingly jamming up our city and our economy. We also hear positive stories, like the many people who say they now feel safer to cycle. One of them, a woman in her 40s, that people feel that our roads are safer, especially when taking their kids to school, and how some of them are now walking, not driving. Stories like the cleaner who's rearranged her schedule so she now does all her addresses locally in the same day. We also know that across the country, the vast majority of livable neighbourhoods have bedded down after initial problems. We know that the bus services in Bristol do not compare with London. We're investing an extra 4.7 million in extra buses, with livable neighbourhoods as one of the priorities, as mentioned by Councillor Tim Rippington. I want to make sure that everyone here knows that the project has delivered 5 separate letters to every single domestic and commercial address in the area, a total of 31,000 letters. That we are every day monitoring the traffic and adjusting the signals as best we can. That if we do nothing, the 10,000 extra homes and over 20,000 extra jobs in Temple Quarter, right on the border of the trial, along with population growth across the city, will mean that we simply
members of the public,
can I?
Sorry, Councillor Plowden. Sorry, members of the public, can I ask you please to stop interjecting when a councillor is speaking? This is not a public debate. This is a councillor debate. Please try to keep quiet at this point. Thank you, Councillor Plowden. Please continue.
So, if we do nothing, we will be simply overrun with congestion. I want to make sure that everyone knows that this trial contains one of our poorest neighbourhoods, with the lowest rate of car ownership and amongst the poorest air in the city. Science shows that this affects everyone's health. Most worryingly, this includes the development of children's brains and their ability to learn. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that the DFT-compliant appraisal shows a return on investment of £12 for every pound invested in this scheme. So I want everyone here to consider what they can do to help change their own travel behaviour. It doesn't have to be every day. Just a 10% reduction in local trips will make a huge difference. I want everyone to consider how they behave on the roads. Aggressive driving is not something that's just started in recent weeks. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone here that this is a trial and we are ready to make changes. But we need 6 months to do the comprehensive evaluation of the scheme as petitioned. And I will, responding to the comments today, make the evaluation criteria available shortly. To be entirely honest, I and the local councillors are watching with bated breath to see the evidence as to how it is working. We know these sorts of schemes have been controversial up and down the country. We knew that before we started. And despite that, the Green and Labour parties supported this scheme in May's elections. and we remain resolute to stand by that pledge, to keep listening, but also to act on evidence, not emotion, both here and in South Bristol.
Thank you, Councillor Plowden. Thank you very much. So I now ask Council to note the issues raised in the petition, together with the comments of members during the debate at this meeting. This matter will now be referred to the Leader and relevant Policy Committee Chair for consideration and to issue a response to the petition organiser. And thank you very much for bringing the petition to full council. That concludes agenda item 8. We will now move on to agenda item 9, statutory review of gambling policy. And I'd like to call on Councillor Stephen Williams to move the report. Councillor Williams, please, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Christmas is nearly upon us, a time of morality tales, and I've got a short one to begin with for all of you. Imagine the 9-year-old me in Abercynon, my mining village in South Wales where I grew up. Sundays were a split affair. In the morning, I went to chapel and Sunday school with my mother, and in the evening, I went to the Junction Hotel, to the pub with my father. That's how I learned a lot of mental arithmetic, by keeping the score in darts. But my attention was always drawn to this bright machine in the corner. And once, before my Auntie Teresa, the barmaid, could stop me, I put my 10-pence pocket money into this machine. And the whole pub watched as it lit up. There was an avalanche of coins, and I'd won the jackpot. Auntie Teresa's advice to me was, put it all back in, because you might win more. And of course, the inevitable happened, and I lost the lot, was very tearful, and needed a lot of lemonades to cheer me up. That Christmas morality tale lies at the heart of a lot of gambling stories, that people start with something that seems innocent, but can lead, taken to excess, to a dangerous addiction that has effects not only on them, but on their families as well. Step forward to 2005, the Gambling Act and the Gambling Commission that was set up by that Act is set up to regulate where gambling has now moved to a largely online activity. But there is still a role for local authorities in licensing the premises in which physical gambling takes place. And members might want to know that currently in Bristol we have 40 betting shops, 5 casino licences, but after the closure last week of one of them, only one casino, the Grosvenor on Anchor Road, 8 adult gaming centres and 3 bingo halls, and of course pubs still have fruit machines. Gambling is a permissive regime. We have no choice over that. We must make sure that gambling is fair, and we must make sure that there are policies to prevent crime and disorder and to protect children. Think of the 9-year-old me. Our officers think this is a low-risk area for the council. We've inspected in the last year 15 betting shops, 1 adult gaming centre, and the then 2 casinos, and found no material issues. We have consulted, as we're obliged to do, on this technical update to our policy that simply puts in definitions that the Gambling Commission requires us to do on an electronic bingo terminal, and recognising that there are unlicensed family entertainment centres that may have fruit machines. The consultations mainly called for the curtailment of gambling that is not within our power. Once this policy is passed, officers will review the Bristol area statements. They'll report back to me and Councillor Breckles for the licensing committee. So all that remains for me in my 3 minutes, Lord Mayor, is to propose the recommendation in paragraph 11 to wish you all a Merry Christmas. And if you do see children running around with their rather enhanced pocket money these days, be careful what advice you give them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Councillor Ed Fraser to second the report. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Williams, for moving this report. So I welcome the necessary updates to the reports and echo GamCare's comment on the consultation, praising that as a council we're going above and beyond the default conditions of the Gambling Act. So I will be seconding this report, but I feel that there is lots more that needs to be done. I also agree with GamCare's comments in the consultation that we should move towards taking a public health approach to gambling, as we should with alcohol and other drugs. Now, one of the changes in the policy is the reference to self-exclusion schemes such as Moses, where gamblers can call an independent hotline and ask to be prevented from going to certain bookmakers. And while these schemes are of course welcome, there are some fundamental flaws. For example, to enforce self-exclusion, bookmakers leave it often to minimum wage staff in their branches to memorise hundreds of faces and names of gamblers not to serve. So it's not being enforced in any meaningful way in lots of bookmakers. So if we're going to help self-excluding gamblers in recovery, then central government are going to need to tighten this up. And it's important that we make it clear, as Councillor Williams has, that what we're allowed to do as a licensing authority really is very limited. Our colleagues who sit on licensing committees are of course very aware of this, and I'm sure would like government to give them more flexibility on how licensing powers can be applied. What's most challenging though is about how we regulate online gambling as a society, because as a local authority we have no authority, no ability to regulate it. And I've seen firsthand the impact that this can have. So I used to live in a house share with a guy called Manny. Like me, Manny has ADHD. And when we lived together, he got me into online gambling. Generally, we'd place accumulator bets on football fixtures. Occasionally, we go to the local casino. And I saw this as a bit of fun, and I did my best to bet within my means. But for him, it was becoming much more serious. One day, I came home from work, and he was in tears on the sofa. He'd got hyperfixated while playing an online casino game and started chasing his losses. And within just half an hour, he'd gone from losing £100 to losing over £10,000. His and his girlfriend's life savings. We now know from academic research that 2 in 5 problem gamblers meet the diagnostic criteria for ADHD. We know from years of research in the banking sector that people with ADHD are more susceptible to impulsive and addictive spending activities, yet this hasn't been recognised in government policy. And this understanding should be key to how we tackle gambling addiction here in Bristol, as it is across the UK. So I'm calling upon national government to make this a consideration for both regulation of online and in-person gambling. Sadly, no, I have got little faith that this will happen because of the links between some politicians and those at the top of the gambling industry. The Chancellor's constituency office has accepted £30,000 from the former chiefs of Sky Betting, Virgin Games and Rainbow Riches Casino. She's also described herself as a personal friend of Michael Dugar, chair of the Betting and Gaming Council, who lobby MPs on behalf of the gambling industry. And the Prime Minister himself has taken a £25,000 donation from Peter Coates, the co-founder of the Bet365 empire. So I call on my colleagues in both the Labour and Conservative groups to pressure their parliamentary colleagues to break these links with the gambling sector, to give us a better chance of being able to treat gambling addiction as a matter of public health, as it should be. And as Respondent 5 to the consultation report simply wrote, anything that reduces the prevalence of gambling-related harm is welcome. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So hopefully the recommendation is being shown on the screen and it's also on the report in your agenda pack. So this is an aye nay vote. So all those in favour say aye. Aye. All against say nay. So the recommendation is approved. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 10, which is the Treasury Management Annual Report 2023 to 2024. This report is for noting. I'd like to call on Councillor Tony Dyer to move the report as Chair of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee. Councillor Dyer, you've got 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is an area which I've got told off before by Councillor Rob Logan for claiming it might be a bit boring, so I'm not going to make that mistake again. Because actually it is very important. As a council, we not only have a responsibility to set a balanced budget, we also have a responsibility to deliver a balanced budget and ensure that budget stays in balance throughout the year. And that requires, in some cases, us using our Treasury management policies to ensure that both our expenditure is matched by our income. So this council will be looking to borrow just shy of £1 billion over the next 5 years, including 140 million within the next financial year. And what I was saying, my Lord Mayor, that is why it's so important that when we borrow money to deliver our capital plans, there is a revenue cost to that. And that is why we need to be sure that when we set a capital programme, that capital programme is achievable and deliverable. We cannot have a capital programme that just looks good on election leaflets. If we want to deliver what we need to deliver in terms of the housing and the infrastructure, we also have to do that in a way that is reasonable so that we do not overborrow and therefore reduce our ability to meet our revenue demands at the same time. So happy to move this report, and thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dyer. So now Councillor Malik to speak on behalf of the Green Group. Councillor Malik.
Yeah, it's my maiden. Did you say that this was a boring subject? This is one of the best subjects. I rise to speak on the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for 24-25, which highlights the Council's ongoing work to manage its borrowing, investments and financial resilience during this very challenging economical period. As of September the 30th, the Council's total borrowing stood at £530 million, including £35 million in short-term borrowing to support the capital programme. By the end of the financial year, borrowing is forecast to rise to £610 million, with Treasury cash balances expected to reduce to £50 million. Despite these pressures, our investments have achieved a strong average return of 5.17%, reflecting careful management. The capital expenditure forecast for the year has been revised to £388 million, funded through a mix of grants, receipts and £72 million in prudential borrowing. This demonstrates the Council's commitment to delivering essential infrastructure while balancing fiscal responsibility. Economical conditions remain challenging but improving, with inflation easing and interest rates expected to decline further. This provides opportunity for the Council to secure borrowing at a favourable rate, which will help manage our long-term financial needs, including the £1 million borrowing requirement, which you referred to over the next 5 years. This report underscores our commitment to robust financial management and prudent decision-making to support Bristol's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Blake to speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It would be no surprise to me, this report, and happy that our party is going to be supporting it, given that I'm on the Finance Committee. We see much of the detail of this. It feels to me that the capital position for the council is improved, because the Greens have cancelled a couple of council house building projects, and that's increased the position. But for me, I tell you what strikes me about it is what are the Greens about? What's your vision for the city? I mean, you campaigned for not to be like Marvin, but it feels to me like you are being like Marvin. You're just sort of carrying on with much of the programme that's carried on from previous administration. It feels to me, where's your vision? Where's the big ideas around the climate change? Because essentially you can look at the capital projects, right? It's where you put your priorities are. And for me, there's no big vision in this. So you're going to have a separate budget, which you didn't do. Where's your vision for the city? There's so much more to come. And I'll tell you one thing about this. You're not going to win the election on just being good managers of the council's finances. It's an important part of it, but you need to have a vision for the city, a vision for the city based on your values. And at the moment, we're not seeing that. So whilst we support the report as it is, and I shouldn't be really giving you advice about how to win the next election, but the fact is that this city needs a decent vision for the whole city. And I feel, to me, like this capital report is just much of the same. And we're obviously going to support that because we felt that we did a great job when we were in power. So for me, it's down to you guys to come forward with a much better programme moving forward, and we look forward to holding you to account over it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blake. Let's move on to Councillor Andrew Brown to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It's often suggested when I get up and do these speeches that I just print out the last speech I gave on the subject and change the figures. However, this time I have done some groundbreaking, genuine research on the Rotten Tomatoes website. More of that later. Anyway, it seems like only last month we were discussing the Treasury Management report, and here we are with the mid-year update. How time flies. So what do we find this time around? Well, first there's a reference to this report having gone to Cabinet and regular reports being made to the Mayor. And that, along with the substance of the actual report, does make it feel like a bit like Back to the Future having this debate again. As I outlined last month, the Treasury Management Annual Report represented Labour's legacy to the city. And this report represents more of that continuing impact of that legacy, because we're still delivering on the budget that was set last year, Kelvin. That is why what's in this report relates to what your party did. It's also one of the pressures that we'll have to incorporate into the budget for this next year, which is making its way through our Finance Subcommittee. It will go to Strategy and Resources, and it will come to full council. But bluntly, the more debt that we have, the less we have on revenue budget to spend on services for our residents. Then those are the services that they expect and they rely on. So that brings me back to the theme of my speech from last time, which you can find on YouTube if you're really interested. I do recommend it. But let me end on a lighter note, because I seem to have missed out a whole chunk that talked about the cold hard cash terms of the £133 million increase in debt to this council over the course of this year, delivering on last year's budget. And whilst that's within prudential limits, it makes more urgent than ever substantive reform to local government. But let me end on that lighter note. I said earlier it felt a little bit like being Back to the Future in here. And I fear, though, that this wasn't so much Back to the Future, which has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%. It's more like Back to the Future 2 with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 63%. Good news, though. Back to the Future 3 scored 81%. It was much more successful. And we, all of us in this chamber, must work to improve the situation so that future editions of this report paint a much more optimistic picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Hucker to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. During the period covered by the report, borrowings have increased by 35 million. This was drawn on a relatively short-term basis, so it will need to be refinanced in the near future. This is in addition to the 50 million borrowed from the PWLB last year. However, as this was also borrowed on a short-term basis, I think this has been inappropriately disclosed in the table in section 12 as long-term debt rather than short-term borrowing. The report states the council is planning to undertake 140 million of new borrowing this financial year. It does not mention that 25 million will be repaid, so the increase in net indebtedness is expected to be 115 million. Borrowing short-term seems reasonable given the expected trajectory for interest rates. However, any new finance will be more expensive following the increase in gilt yields arising from the autumn budget, as PWLB loan rates equate to gilt yields plus a margin. 119 million, the outstanding finance on PFI and finance leases, remains a significant liability for the council. The 50-year PWLB loan rate at the start of the period was 5.07%, and this has increased to 5.13% at the end of the period. In 2023, Cabinet received a report on the Colston Hall refurbishment project that indicated the 85 million overspend could be financed by a 50-year PWLB loan at a rate of 1.5%, resulting in repayments of 2.2 million per year. At the time, the cost of 50-year money from the PWLB was in excess of 5%, and it remains so. I could not understand how the council could expect to obtain finance at 1.5%. The paper presented to Cabinet was not credible. The council prioritises security and liquidity over yield for investments. I agree with this approach. The return broadly aligns with the benchmark sterling overnight index average rate. I am reassured that the council invests its surplus cash into high-quality, low-risk counterparties. I note the whole 65 million on deposit is repayable on demand, which does provide maximum flexibility. Slippage remains in the capital programme. The budget for 2024-25 was 577 million, but the forecast outturn is only 338 million. The forecast outturn is therefore less than 60% of the approved budget. The 2024 to 2029 Treasury strategy forecasts a medium-term net borrowing requirement of 996 million, an increase of 300.
Councillor Hucker, could we make this your last sentence, please? Thank you.
I will. In the rolling 5-year period. I think the actual outturn will be significantly less than this, but time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that concludes agenda item 10. We now move to agenda item 11, committee membership update. I'd like to move this report, and I call on the former Lord Mayor, Councillor O'Rourke, to second the report.
Happy to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. The recommendation is hopefully being shown on the screen right now and is on the report in your agenda pack. This is an aye, nay vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. More enthusiasm, I think. Yay! All against say nay. The recommendation is approved. And I'm pleased to say at this point we are now going to have an adjournment for 20 minutes. Refreshments for councillors are in the rooms along the corridor, and the conference hall is also available. We will restart the meeting at 10:02. Okay, please return on time. Thank you.
My door's brought us a bit, so we must do it justice.
So 30 minutes is allowed for motions. So if we are to hear both the golden and the silver motion, we will need about 10 minutes extra. Is everyone happy if we just extend the meeting by 10 minutes? So we should finish just after 4:30, if that's all right with everyone. Okay, let's continue. So agenda item 12, golden motion, council communications retention policy, and the motion will be shown on the screen in the room during the proposing speech. I'd like to ask Councillor Graham Miles of the Conservative Group to move the motion, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Quite simply, the sudden deletion of all emails of the former Mayor and Deputy Mayors raises questions and eyebrows around transparency. Not only do the deletions breach the Council's own information retention procedures, it also means a significant reduction in scrutiny, accountability and openness on behalf of the Council and residents of the city. I repeat, it was the wrong thing to do. So just 3 points. Firstly, we need to find those emails. We need to honour those residents' freedom of information requests and subject access requests, which are still outstanding after several years. We need the Mayor and at least one of the Deputy Mayor's email accounts to be able to respond to them, as we have a duty to do. Information Retention Policy Section 6.8 states information should be retained longer if required for FOIs and subject access requests. Second point, sadly those residents who are asking for this information have very little faith in Bristol City Council. Therefore, to ensure integrity and transparency, we need to have independent scrutiny of all attempts to locate and retrieve this information. I don't know if the information is available, but with independent scrutiny, we should soon have an answer. And we also need better information retention procedures. We need to ensure emails are held in the same regard as other documentation. Our policy regarding information retention doesn't appear to be fit for purpose and needs to be reviewed and discussed by the relevant policy or audit committee. Once agreed, the policy needs to be regularly reviewed. Data is too important to have outdated procedures. I also believe it is right and proper that we have some flexibility regarding the retention policy, where, depending on your rank and role within the organisation, the information retained on your behalf may be for a longer period. If you are a leader, deputy, policy chair, senior officer, and we can work out the details, then your email should be retained for years rather than days. These rules should already have been in place, but they're not. But tonight we have an opportunity to show the residents of Bristol, in this new era following the mayoral system, that we value the Nolan principles of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty and leadership. And we all seek a better Bristol together, one which is based on trust. Thank you.
And now Councillor Wells to second the motion, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second this motion with my maiden speech on a subject which I feel is incredibly important and which is close to my heart. Like many other members across this chamber, my journey into politics began with community campaigning. Sitting on the outside, trying to push for positive change, the council often felt like an impenetrable fortress in terms of access to information and clarity of the decision-making process. We relied on a few friendly officers who shared with us as much information as they could, and sympathetic councillors who were often just as in the dark as us. It was this frustration that was at the core of my decision to join a political party and stand for election as a councillor, but I appreciate that not everyone has the capacity or indeed the desire to make such a choice. When I was knocking on doors in the run-up to the election, and indeed in many conversations since then, transparency and openness come up time and time again. People may not always use those words, but ultimately that's the core of their distrust of the council and other public bodies, a distrust which is at an all-time high. The committee system under which we are now operating offers increased opportunities for members of the public and elected members of the chamber to actively participate on a level playing field. There are more opportunities for public petitions, statements and questions to be heard, and members not from the leading party are able to receive informative and non-partisan answers to their questions. We're also seeing decisions being genuinely being debated and made in public rather than the performative theatre of the previous cabinet meetings. However, we have to admit that we're still not getting it completely right. We've seen questions ping-ponged between committees because no one's quite sure where the responsibility lies. We've seen some answers obfuscated behind legal jargon or language other than plain, understandable English. And of course, we've seen the deletion of important contextual information which gives insight into decision-making. The Nolan Principles of Public Life, for the third time this afternoon, selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty and leadership are embedded in the Council's constitution and in the Code of Conduct for members and officers. However, it's my perception that they're not yet embedded in our culture. Culture shift takes time and energy, but we as a council need to commit to it. I dream of a day when the numbers of FOI requests are at an all-time low, simply because the information people are asking for is proactively published before it is asked for. With decision-making, we know it's impossible to please everyone. We've seen that tonight. But it should be clear what evidence was used to make a decision, who made the decision, and why. I would encourage all members to not only vote for this motion, but to embody its spirit and the way we conduct ourselves as elected representatives. Our citizens voted for change, and we need to deliver it to regain their trust. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from speakers on the motion, and first, Councillor Heather Mack to speak on behalf of the Green Group. Heather, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As I was noting down some comments for this speech, the chamber was full, and I was imagining standing up and speaking to all the members of the public that had attended to hear this, very important. So,
we've got Suzanne.
I would potentially...
And Dan.
On this point, I would probably say the most important member to be hearing it, but I would appreciate it would have been good if you were part of a crowd. It is strange for me to stand up in support of a Conservative motion, but I am in support, as you can hear. I would point out that the emails were deleted under the Labour policy that was prior to the election, with a new administration and a new attitude in the council. We obviously need to review those policies. But I also want to touch on this much bigger question that Councillor Wells helpfully introduced at the beginning, about the point of the motion about cultivating a culture of openness and cooperation, because I really do hope that having that throughout our culture and throughout our work will actually reduce the need for FOIs and other sort of formal the requesting of that information. I think the reason that people FOI, the reason that people want to see all of our emails is generally because there's a lack of trust and that information isn't being proactively shared when it's necessary. And this has been going for years. I'm not going to comment on it happening this year, last year, the last decade in this council. It's actually been confidence in UK political institutions has halved since 1990. And so this is a national picture that we are facing. But therefore, if we are facing that, it should be a priority for us in this building. And I think we all have a role to play in that. The lack of trust prevents the council, I believe, in co-creating and engaging with communities across the city. I also think it means that the voices that I would most like to hear, that we really need to hear, see little point in contacting us and little point in giving us those voices. And I think that is really not helping. And I don't think this is always fair. We are all elected by our local communities. We are all beholden to our local communities. We've engaged with our local communities in order to get elected. And we must always remember that and make it clear to our communities that that's who we are working for and who we are listening to. I think we all have a role to play in how we communicate. And I think it's clear that we in this building do not always demonstrate our trust with the public in the way that we communicate, in our transparency. We are going into the committee review group. sit on the committee review group, and that will be an opportunity, especially when it comes to constitution, to make some changes. And one example, especially around that point of listening to people, of responding to people openly, is my wish to remove the word frivolous from our question guidance and just how we are responding and filtering out questions. I find frivolous and incredibly patronising. I think it maybe even has sort of class connotations. The idea that we are...
Councillor Mack, have you almost finished?
It is my last...
Go for it.
They asked me for my last sentence. So thank you for this motion and for those who are trying to engage with the council and struggling. And from the position of leadership in the council, I pledge to do my bit to make this better.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blenkinsop to speak on behalf of the Labour Group, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm glad to see that the discourse around this topic has been relatively collegiate and even-handed, and I'll be responding in the same manner. Much as Councillor Eddy said of the last Labour motion, I agree with about 98% of the content of this one. So I'll focus more on the strengths, where I see there is some small room for improvement, and finish with just a small but relevant criticism. We're in a very modern era where politicians are under more scrutiny from the public than ever before. This is a double-edged sword. We might rightfully condemn the amount of misinformation about politicians of all parties on social media, but it also gives a considerable power of interrogation, quite rightfully in my view. People have the opportunity to ask questions and to demand answers. This should be celebrated and, as Councillor Mack draws out, encouraged, and I'm glad that this motion seeks to do so. Better administration results in better government. That sounds very trite, but nonetheless it's true. Standardising the way we operate, moving towards ease of use, and the regular check-ins are worthwhile steps with this in mind. And I agree that a culture of openness and honesty will lend itself to better decision-making, better governance, and better conduct from members. I'm all for it at every step of the way. I do note point 3, I was a little bit concerned about its practicality. I understand that this motion will be considered by the IT staff, and I'd simply suggest members listen should they have any concerns. Likewise, I think there would have been scope for expanding this motion to have better oversight and scrutiny of the diaries of the current administration, not just emails. Standard practice under the Mayor was to publish his diary. This has not been the case for the Leader of the Council, and that's something we might want to muse on. Both of these are, however, relatively minor points. It's a good motion. I do find the focus on the last Labour administration somewhat unpalatable, but not for the reasons you might think. I will take Councillor Morris's points with regards to the ICO in relatively good faith. It's important we have independence and integrity. But there have been a number of rather interesting FOIs for former Green Party and Conservative councillors as well. And as councillors and Dr. Audrey have pointed out, there have been concerns around the transparency of the current administration with unanswered or poorly answered public questions, £92 million decisions taken behind closed doors. This is not one singular issue with one singular individual, and to suggest otherwise is being complacent. This is something, again, agreeing with Councillor Mack, where the Council as a whole can do better. If the motion had sought initially to universalise its point and its principles, it would have been stronger for it. But I am glad that there is reflection across the chamber. It's a good and worthwhile motion, and it's one the Labour Group will be supporting. It's a bit of a shame that there had been some political sniping as part of it, but the Council should have very strong data retention policies. We should be a leader in that respect, and I encourage everyone to vote for the motion.
And now Councillor Clark to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
I feel slightly reticent turning on this microphone, to be honest with you. It seems to be a bit better now. I'm going to keep this fairly brief because it seems like we're breaking out in a form of consensus this afternoon, and it's close to Christmas, so we want to be nice to each other. But I'm really sorry that the Conservative group felt that they needed to bring this motion to full council today, particularly as this is their one opportunity of the year to bring a golden motion. But I suppose it reflects the level of frustration from both councillors and, more importantly, members of the public. To be honest, I'm not sure why the council has taken this stance, as it leads to frustration and mistrust all round. And we know that the public's faith in politics and trust in politicians is an all-time low, which is something the Liberal Democrat group highlighted in our electoral reform motion. What we are debating today is a breakdown in trust in the Council's communications protocol, and a failure to meet the Nolan principles as previously mentioned. And the bottom line is that we do not need to be in this mess of missed emails, slow responses, of freedom of information requests, and vague and incomplete answers to questions. So what can a council do to rectify this hangover from the mayoral system and the Labour administration? Moving forward, it is incumbent upon the leader of council to lead the way, and rather than carry on the behaviour of the mayoral system where public perception was of a culture of secrecy and poor communication, we need to lead by example and enact a pledge of openness. This whole area needs to be addressed so that the council can start to repair the damage and become an organisation which works with its residents in an open and transparent way and leaves the old cultures behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, would you like to respond as mover of the motion?
Oh, I think I'm in the round as well, Lord Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I don't think you were allocated. But yes, I'm more than happy to allow you to have a talk in the round.
We've got plenty of time.
Yeah. Councillor Galandris, 3 minutes, please.
I wanted to make... Wait.
Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Freedom of speech and freedom of information are key components of a free society. We are fortunate to live in a free society, but protecting our freedom requires proactivity on our part. To quote Benjamin Franklin, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. Were Benjamin Franklin alive today, he might add freedom of information. Section 77 of the Freedom of Information Act is very clear and states it is a criminal offence to alter, block, destroy or conceal information. When a staff member leaves an organisation, the relevant email account is indeed switched off. The former staff member can no longer access their email account, and anyone emailing that account will have the email bounce back. However, the historic emails do not disappear. In the private sector, especially in financial services where I've worked, it is commonplace to need access to the historic emails of a former employee, for example, to clarify a customer query about an order or instruction. The IT department is able to access the emails without any difficulty, delay or cost. Most of the private sector uses Microsoft Outlook for emails, and so too does Bristol City Council. The council's IT department will have easy access to the email accounts of former employees, including former mayors and deputy mayors. Let's stop pretending otherwise. To suggest to members of the public that the emails are not available is simply not true, and appears to be a flagrant attempt to circumvent national legislation. This behaviour damages the reputation of our city and is a stain on our civic character. In summary, my Lord Mayor, there can on occasion be valid reasons to reject freedom of information requests in whole or in part, and the Act sets these out. However, to reject an access request simply because the email account is no longer active is utterly unacceptable, and in my view is a breach of the Council's statutory duty. Almost a year ago to this day was my mother's funeral. She came from Greece, a country whose national motto is Eleftheria I Thanatos, freedom or death. Freedom is very, very, very precious. Freedom of information is now enshrined in statute. I hope the Council will have a Damascene rethink, liaise with its IT department, and respond to all valid freedom of information requests. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Galandris. And so back to Councillor Morris, if you'd like to respond as mover of the motion.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor, and members of Council. There wasn't any attempt to particularly pick on any one party. It's an issue that needs to be addressed, but for us to get it right going forward, we have to look at the history and get that right as well. And point 5 of the motion, where we cultivate a culture of openness, cooperation and data disclosure, where this is possible and practical, to enable the authority to become regarded as an exemplar for other public bodies and organisations. What a great aspiration, if the motion passes tonight, for us all and the city and the council to work towards. Thank you.
Okay, so we move to the vote, and this will be an e-vote. As usual, please make sure you're in your allocated seats so that your vote is recorded accurately. And you're voting on the motion, and the vote will open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. Thank you. So that's 60 votes for, no against, no abstentions. So that is unanimously carried. Well done. Congratulations. So now we move to the silver motion, which is supporting the Climate and Nature Bill. The motion will be shown on the screen in the room during the proposing speech. I'd like to ask Councillor Sarah Classic of the Liberal Democrat Group to move the motion.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'm rising today to move our third full council motion in a row, our second silver motion this year, and I'm happy that it seems the odds of Oliver's hat has been kind to our group this year. I deny any allegations that we are paying him for extra entries into that ballot. So today I'm urging councillors to support all councillors in the chamber to support this motion to back the Climate and Nature Bill, a groundbreaking step forward in addressing the twin crisis of climate change and ecological degradation. This bill, currently before Parliament, represents an ambitious, science-led approach to secure the future of our planet, while reinforcing the commitments that Bristol has made through its own climate and ecological emergency declarations. The origins of this bill are rooted in cross-party collaboration. First initiated in 2020 by former Green MP Caroline Lucas, it set the tone for what has become an essential effort to unite voices across the political spectrum. Since then, Liberal Democrat, Labour and other parliamentary allies have carried the baton, working tirelessly to push this initiative through Parliament. And most recently, Liberal Democrat MP for South Cotswolds, Dr Ros Savage, has reintroduced the bill as a private member's bill. It's passed its first reading and is now awaits its second. This history underscores what we aim to do here today: build consensus, foster collaboration and demonstrate that this chamber is united in our determination to tackle the climate emergency as the architects of this bill have been. So why is this motion so critical? The current framework guiding the UK's climate efforts is likely not strong enough to ensure we meet our international obligations, including things like the 1.5 degree target. The Climate and Nature Bill goes beyond rhetoric, proposing real solutions. It calls for binding climate and nature targets, short-term science-based milestones that prioritise both emission reductions and biodiversity recovery. A citizens' assembly, a diverse and inclusive mechanism to guide governmental strategy, ensuring decisions reflect public values and urgency. And nature restoration by 2030, reversing ecological decline to restore habitats and protect vital ecosystems. This approach embodies the principle of climate justice, acknowledging the disproportionate impact of climate change on vulnerable communities globally and ensuring equitable solutions. While this motion is about national policy, our role is to lead by example and pressure national leaders to act decisively. Supporting this bill aligns with our vision of a carbon-neutral Bristol by 2030 and reaffirms our leadership on these urgent issues. Support for this bill in Parliament is widespread. Over 188 MPs from across parties have backed the bill, including all Liberal Democrat MPs, all Green MPs, including Bristol Central MP Carla Denyer, and Labour MPs as well, including Bristol North West MP Darren Jones. Regionally, neighbouring councils like South Gloucestershire and Baines have endorsed it, as have organisations like the Wildlife Trust and the Rivers Trust. It's time for Bristol to add its voice to a growing coalition. Let this chamber send a clear message that Bristol stands united, regardless of party affiliation, in the face of these global challenges. Supporting this motion is not just a vote for a bill, it's a vote for a future that we can be proud to pass on to the next generation.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch to second the motion, please.
Hello, Council. This is my maiden speech. This bill is the only proposed legislation before the UK Parliament that ensures a comprehensive and joined-up approach to the climate emergency and nature crisis. 0 Hour is the campaign group behind the Climate and Nature Bill, and you can sign up on their website at zerohour.uk. They are tracking all of those who have stated their support. These include 188 MPs from several parties, including all 72 Lib Dem MPs and all 4 Green Party MPs, 54 members of the House of Lords, 4 directly elected Metro mayors, but not Dan Norris, sadly, 374 councils, including our neighbours in the Lib Dem controlled South Gloucestershire and Baines, 231 scientists, and 799 organisations, including the Wildlife Trust, the Rivers Trust, and the Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership. We note that although 2 Bristol MPs are backing the bill, 3 Bristol Labour MPs have not backed it yet, and in fact less than a quarter of Labour MPs have backed it, and only 2 Conservative MPs have publicly supported the bill. The Conservatives failed to set up a viable path to meet the 1.5 degree limit during their time in government, and the current government must be held to account and take responsible leadership on climate and nature. We are this week clearing up after Storm Dara. The effects of climate change are here, now, with increasingly intense storms bringing wind damage and flooding. The costs of mitigating against flooding, the rising costs of insurance, and the damage to the economy of closed businesses and transport problems, and the cost to us as a council to clear up are now becoming patently clear. I would have thought that the government and all UK elected representatives would declare that we cannot now avoid taking drastic action to mitigate against climate change and biodiversity loss. John Harris in The Guardian wrote that the bill highlights how much our politicians are denying the urgency of the moment, and the bill presents clear and precise proposals to drastically reduce carbon emissions and restore biodiversity in the same typefaces and official vocabulary as the laws that define the whole swathes of our lives. It makes the prospect of radical action eminently imaginable. Colleagues, as 0 Hour have stated, radical action is now urgent. Governments have left it far too late to address climate change. Long-term average warming is now close to 1.5 degrees C, and this year the Earth experienced its first full year where the global average temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees C, the highest level in 125,000 years. Uncertainties in the complex climate system mean it's difficult to determine exactly when we are likely to breach the 1.5 degree target. Furthermore, there is ongoing scientific debate concerning the possibility that in fact warming may have accelerated. This underlines the nature of the emergency we're facing and the need to urgently implement immediate and deep cuts in the burning of fossil fuels and make fundamental changes in the way we use our land. Political leaders must act now because we cannot afford not to. We have a large delivery gap between what we needed to be doing and where we are currently, which the government are trying to bridge. But that's just to take us back to targets that are 13 years old.
Councillor Gooch, if you can wrap it up now, please.
Yes. Okay.
You're well over time. In fact,
Sorry.
In fact, stop altogether. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I
know it's Christmas, but that's quite over. But so we'll carry on. Thank you very much. So we'll now hear from speakers on the motion. Thank you. Thank you for your maiden speech. But 3 minutes, okay. So firstly, Councillor Fodor to speak on behalf of the Green Group.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you to the group opposite for supporting what was originally a Green Party initiative by proposing the Climate and Nature Bill is supported by this council. As many people do know, and as you acknowledged, in 2020 it was former Green MP Caroline Lucas who initiated the cross-party campaign for the Climate and Nature Bill. And it's designed to ensure more statutory protection for both climate and nature in a joined-up way, and it gained cross-party support in the previous Parliament. Then, in October, the Liberal Democrat MP for the South Cotswold, Dr Ros Savage, did reintroduce this, bringing back the Climate and Nature Bill to the House of Commons for its first reading in this Parliament. Our own City Council alderperson and local Green MP for Bristol Central Carla Denyer has co-proposed this, of course. And that's the initiator of the influential and first in Europe climate emergency motion, she knows that a council alone cannot solve these global problems. Now, its second reading is scheduled for the 24th of January in 2025. And we do urge everyone to express their support and write to the other city MPs, especially those who haven't already supported it publicly, to ensure that they give votes in its support. You'll see that a wide range of influential organisations and businesses support the bill. As was said, it's coordinated by 0 Hour UK. We need this bill to pass to achieve various climate and nature targets for the United Kingdom, to set an example, to join up our action and to meet international obligations. The bill also calls for the establishment of a temporary climate and nature citizens' assembly. Of course, we piloted a city citizens' assembly in the previous council, initiated by Green Councillor O'Rourke. And it's also important to reverse the damage to the natural world and meet the other targets by 2030. So in short, I'd like to see the whole chamber support this in line with the support in Parliament from representatives of every party in both Houses of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now Councillor Tate is going to speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you. I would like to begin by thanking Councillor Classic for bringing this motion forward. My first venture into local politics myself was as a community climate activist and the co-author of the Bristol's Just Transition Declaration. However, it's clear that as a global community, we remain far from where we need to be effectively tackling the climate crisis and stay within the 1.5 degree threshold above pre-industry levels outlined by the IPCC. The 0 Hour Climate and Nature Bill is a move in the right direction. This bill in March 2024 was presented by Labour's MP Alex Sobel. It seeks to make clear the links between nature policy and climate policy so that we can protect nature whilst also mitigating against climate change and aiming to stay within the 1.5 degree limit. Examples of this include solar farms, which are good for reducing carbon emissions but pose risk to local habitats, which is why we need a framework which this bill provides to take both areas into consideration. No other nation has proposed such comprehensive legalisation. Our Labour government recognises the gravity of the climate crisis. Its mission to make Bristol a clean energy superpower reflects this with ambitious pledges, most notably cutting carbon emissions by 80% compared to 1990 levels, by doubling onshore wind capacity, tripling solar panel and quadrupling offshore wind by 2030. The Labour government has also demonstrated initiatives and ambitions in establishing the UK as a global climate leader. Last month, this was recognised by the President of COP29, highlighting Labour's role in forming a global coalition with developing countries, which underscores our commitment to addressing the global climate crisis. We can also be proud of what Bristol City Council has done to reach their own targets of carbon neutrality by 2030, notably Bristol City Leap. To finish, while I support this motion, I can't help but wonder if we could be using our powers as councillors to effectively direct the people of Bristol with our motions. For though it saddens me to think of a day when I will no longer be a councillor and lose this unique privilege that comes with that, I can use my free time then to write letters to the national government. That said, we're here now, and I do wholeheartedly support this motion for Parliament to adopt the Climate and Nature Bill and encourage all of my colleagues to do so. Thank you.
And now Councillor Weston on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Sorry, I'm slightly marvelling at the fact that the Labour Party complaining about a motion asking for a letter to be written to government. We just sat through about 14 years of the Labour Party motions requesting letters be written to government, and now I'm scratching my head as to what's changed. Anyway, so I thought as my Christmas gift to you all, I'd give you the benefit of a contrary opinion. I wouldn't want you all to break out in festive cheer quite yet. The Climate Change and Nature Bill is well-meaning, it is. However, it is flawed. It's well-intended. I think we would all agree with the emergency and the crisis when it comes to climate change. I think we all agree with the need to improve our biodiversity. Very little mentioned actually in the speeches today. And bringing nature back and helping them bounce back, because it's a mixed picture out there. You have things like seabirds have declined by a quarter, seal populations are up. Various things have moved, and we need to try and bring them back to the former levels. The problems I have with the bill is, first of all, I do actually think that the old government and the new government is trying to set out strategies to meet the requirements. So I think the climate change nature bill is duplicating. For example, you have things like the Green Industrial Revolution, the Energy White Paper, North Sea Transition Deal, Industrial Decarbonation Strategy, Net Zero Strategy, British Energy Security Strategy, Powering Up Britain, and all the rest of it. There are a lot of strategies and plans already doing what this bill sets out to do. However, one of the problems that I really have with it is I believe fundamentally it's undemocratic in what it's trying to do. And this is where I really break down on it. Because what you want is you want a series of binding targets to be set by the Climate Change Committee. No, I want the binding target. It's the Climate Change Committee's job to advise government. Is the government then selects the binding targets, and they are voted for by the people. These targets should be voted for by the British public. Hello, British public. Both of them. But don't answer that. I don't want to ruin my buzz. But that's what it should be set for. This is a democratic. When we're looking at how we run the country, we can't just look at a single element of it. We have to look at everything in the round. There are competing pressures on us, and we have to weigh up climate change, housing, economy, defence, every single part of it in the round. It can't just be done with one single body that's not elected setting a target. You also have the situation where you want to set up a citizens' assembly. Again, a group of citizens not elected, selected by people that also aren't elected. We have a democracy where people vote for people to then set the targets and set the strategy. So today we're abstaining on this. It's well intended, but it goes against the fundamentals of the democracy. What we should be doing is asking politicians to do more, yes, but they're the ones voted for by the people. We shouldn't be selected by people in the back room. I'm sorry, we're abstaining, my Lord Mayor. Thank you. And Merry Christmas to all.
Oh, thank you. Same to you. So, Councillor Classic, would you like to respond as mover of the motion?
Thank you very much. I will keep my comments brief as my Christmas present to everyone in the chamber. I just want to say thank you very much to Green councillors and Labour councillors for your support on this. Councillor Weston, I'll give you a Christmas list next time so I get what I actually want instead of a contrary opinion at next year's full council. But thank you for all the words today, and yes, please do vote for the bill. Thank you.
Okay. So now we move to the vote. Once again, make sure you're in your allocated seats as it's an e-vote, so your vote is recorded accurately. And you're voting on the motion, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Thank you, Tom. Please vote now. Thank you. So that's 53 votes for, no votes against, and 6 abstentions. So that vote has been carried. Many congratulations. Thank you very much. So before you head off, just a couple of things. Firstly, thank you very much for attending today's meeting. The next meeting of Full Council will be held on Tuesday, the 14th of January 2025. I would also like to take a moment to thank our interim Chief Executive, Paul Martin, for his steady leadership over the past 6 months, and wish him all the best for the future. Thank you so much, Paul. And finally, I'd like to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.